Oh, wow. Thank you. First of all, everything is a gift. Everything has been a gift from God from day one. And we'll go back and talk about day one if we have a moment. But, God has blessed me, my family, my mom. On the day I was born, there was a tragic heart condition that she had in labor with me, and God just swooped in. And with surgeons and nurses and neighbors and church members, this is many years ago, and she survived what's called a dissecting aortic aneurysm during labor.
Wow.
The first mother who had ever survived that longer than 72 hours. She fought 60 days before she saw me. Wow. Father was the silent patient in the whole situation, but we were blessed to have two visiting professors from Tulane University who were at Yale, which is where I was born, in Cheshire, in New Haven, Connecticut. Wow. They were there. They came over. They were working on aortic valve replacement and everything that my mother needed. Wow. And she didn't quit. She fought the battle. And so I was raised, Tamra, in that setting of gratitude, as well as my father's love of words and his patience were just things that just became part of our fabric. So it wasn't, this massive thing that happened later in life that kind of woke me up. It was something that was sort of a slow but intentional walk and talk, watching my parents just be so faithful and so grateful for life.
Wow. Wow. That is very, very different than a lot of people's stories that come on this show. And I've been doing this for 5 years. And I'm processing, the beauty of that, right? The fact that you didn't have to go through that, like, pull the rug up from underneath you kind of moment. But simultaneously, it's been told that people are experiencing trauma as early as birth, right? Birthing and being birthed in the birth canal is traumatic, even for the woman, but even more so for the child. So it's interesting that was kind of the birthing place, no pun intended and pun fully intended, of what God was going to do through you and your mom's resilience. I mean, Lisa Huey is here live with us right now, I know you're hanging out with his husband or her husband just a couple of minutes ago golfing, but she's just talking about the miracle that is, and that's truly the word that it is. It's a total miracle, and you got to walk out living a miracle life alongside her. I'm sure there were many moments where she was like, remember, right? Remember? And so that's a huge testimony. When in the midst of that, did you really start grabbing hold to words?
Yeah. So, Dad was just a word nut. And, when you're 14 or 15 years old and you bring friends over and then you realize you don't want to bring your friends over because your dad's going to be the fun guy or someone's going to come in and say something. I don't know about you, but that was me. And so you kind of turn off from it a little bit and you go, okay, Dad, this is crazy. I mean, I did the TED talk about the plays that he wrote and the characters' names in the play. He would have the minister in the play who was incredibly brilliant with the Old Testament and with the New Testament. And her name was Pastor Present.
Yeah.
Really, Dad? Come on. Okay, guys, we've got to leave. We can't listen to this anymore. And the nurse, this one's for Lisa, the nurse at the hospital, her name was Ophelia Pulse.
Yes.
So that probably was the start of it. I was a music major in college for my first year, and I've always loved music. My father was a musician, and one way that I got back to music was I would write reviews for emerging artists, new tunes, whether it was streaming or CDs, and that was so much fun. And it kind of got me a little bit around, visual writing, like alliteration, and I would talk about a group that sounded so good. It was so comfortable. It was like a loosely knit sweater. And so I was given this gift to write that had this way of kind of drawing a picture without using art. And so that kept going and kept growing. But the real, what I call BAM moment in my life, I said everything was so grateful and everything was expectation, work hard, everything works out for the best. The Lord has a plan for you, etc. Both of my parents passed. I was in the healthcare industry for 25 years, and that progress continued, right? I mean, it was this position, then this one, and then I moved into a different type of role in a company, and it was that was sort of the world. And all of a sudden, I suffered a layoff of a massive quantity within this company. I was with 500 of me and my closest friends were let go, and that's when I had that moment where, wait a minute, this isn't this isn't a glide. And I don't mean it a glide like everything came easy, but
Right.
just, it was what? Wait a minute, 25 years. You must be thinking of somebody else. You know, you spelled my name wrong. I wasn't supposed to do all that stuff, right? And then you wake up, you're driving home and you go, wait a minute, this is real. And the emotions in probably 30 minutes time was up and down, everything. And the following the morning, exactly the next morning, I woke up and didn't really know what to do, but a word pounded in my head, and I keep a notepad by my bed, and the word strong came pounding in my head, and that's the cover of the book. I wrote that word vertically, and it became stand tall, remain optimistic, now go for it. And I went, okay, I'll stop there because there's more to the story, but that's really when it started.
Well, I love the element and the evolution of it. And I think a lot of times when people are thinking about maybe stepping out on their own, or they've been let go, and we know there was the mass exodus of just jobs, and whether it was chosen or forced during COVID, which is kind of where Clubhouse took its root, right? Is this knowing that often people think they have to start from scratch. And I love that you didn't. You actually got to start back by tracing kind of your storyline without really knowing that words had been such an impact in your life, regardless if you raised your hand to say, I'm a wordsmith or not. The poetic kind of had flown through your father into you. And I know that's a huge part of your TEDx, which I really loved the nostalgia behind your TEDx, because I don't think a lot of people think to the past. They're often thinking towards like, how is this going to help this person moving forward? And your TEDx had this like pretty ribbon that came alongside it that allowed us to simmer on the people who have poured into us. And so I appreciated that part about it. There's a lot of things I appreciated about it because I love words so much, but the storyline connected to me as well. And I think about, songwriters. I'm a poet for sure. And so there's that play, and the acrostics are surely poetry, right? It's what they're taught anyway in elementary school. So how has this impacted your career since you were in this place of nothing, and then the word started to really get cemented?
Yeah. So the writing that then ultimately became a book went over 420 some consecutive mornings. I would write a book, write a word, etc. Probably 30. Just back up to the beginning of the question, though. Probably about 30 days after that layoff. I mean, it was back in the canoe. I mean, back in the role. I had some networking. I mean, so it wasn't that difficult to find a job.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly scary, like a 2x4 in the back of the head at that moment. So my initial go-to was back on the saddle, get back in, use your network, and that worked out really well. But the writing continued, and it was almost like a doodle, or a little hobby, but it was more than that, because it was a gift. It was a divine download, and I'll argue with anyone that wants to argue with me about that. It was not me. I just had a pencil, and because the word, and I'll tell you why. One day I wrote a word, I posted it out it was a small text group of friends. This was several years ago. And one night I got a call from a friend of mine who is a pediatric heart surgeon. So he's operating on the hearts of babies of 7 days old, the size of a walnut. And I said, oh, okay, what did you need this word for? He goes, well, we're in scrubbing. We're getting ready to do an operation on a newborn baby. And there were possibly 10 things that we would have to deal with when we went in. And each of those 10 things, there were at least that many combinations of solutions to the one. So they were scrubbing 6 or so feet. You think about it, they're in there, they're getting clean, they're talking through everything, and he goes, my phone went off. And one of my assistants pulled the phone up and said, you have a text from Bruce. He goes, read it to me. And it was, today, be calm. And it was catch a little moment. Said to me that night, he goes, that allowed us to step back from all of the maybe the rapid peddling, if you will, of what things could be. And we just, hey, we've got this. And when he sent that to me, and it had an impact, the way he described the impact it had on their day, I knew that this was not going to stop. It had to keep going. So I kept the corporate career, tried to figure out what writing a book was like. I mean, you do it, and so you know that if you've never done it before, I mean, it's always good to be new at something, but given a gift of writing, I just had to figure out the way to do it. So we took our time, did it. But then the mission became whenever I'm booked to speak, which I stepped into as another calling because I've done sales presentations all my career, but actually to talk around something that is personal, impactful, and how can we make it about the other person? It's not just me standing up and say, hey, you know, mom this, then job this, then writing this, aren't I great? No, it was how can this be used to impact someone in the seat? And that's when it just started to blossom. And then we started, every time we get booked to speak, we find a place to either speak that's a not-for-profit, or we find a place where we can donate books. That's kind of the mission. And it just continued to grow. And it was almost impossible to keep them separate. I mean, it was still corporate America, but it was like, wait a minute, I'm being asked to speak at this conference, but I've got this work thing. So it became blended as best we could.